Welcome back to Mega Man What If, the show where we look at what if events in the Mega Man franchise were different. Today, we're going to be going 100 years into the future, into the X era. The X era, taking place in 21XX, features, Mega Man X, and was started in the game Mega Man X, or X1, as fans would call it. Of course, it features X as the main character, a maverick hunter trying to keep the peace and protect humanity. Though, what would happen if X wasn't the main character? Or was even there at all? Well, a lot more than you'd probably think. In the year 20XX, the roboticist Dr. Thomas Light was creating his greatest creation yet, Project X, a robot unlike any other, one who could think and feel just like a human. However, while Dr. Light was creating X, he thought to himself that humanity might not be ready for a robot of this caliber. And, unlike the original timeline, he decided to not finish X, fearing what humanity might do when finding him. So instead, he put the blueprints for X inside of his helmet, so whenever humanity was ready, they could then create robots, such as X. And thus, he would leave the helmet there, sealed away in his lab, as time moved on. 100 years would pass and we would enter the year 21XX, where an archaeologist named Dr. Kane would be searching through some ruins of what appeared to be an old laboratory. As he climbed over various pieces of rubble and broken machinery, he entered a room that seemed to have some sort of capsule. Now what could this be? It appeared to be a helmet floating inside of the capsule. As Kane approached, he pushed a hand on top of the console next to the capsule, which seemed to open it. The helmet fell onto the capsule's floor, as Kane picked it up and examined it. As he examined the helmet, it appeared to be very high-tech, almost as if it came from the future. Could this really be an artifact from the past civilization? This could be a monumental discovery. I must show this to the Council of Arcadia at once. Kane would then travel back to Able City, home of Arcadia Tower, where the Council of Arcadia, which are the governing body of the world, reside. Dr. Kane, back from your expedition, I assume? A blonde-haired young woman greeted Dr. Kane as he entered. This was Misty Garnell, the main receptionist for the Arcadia Council. Why, yes, I have found something most peculiar. Please arrange a meeting with the council at once. Unfortunately, I think they're all booked for today, but I'll see if I can arrange a holo meeting for you. Suddenly, the doors burst open. I have arrived! A very well-dressed and arrogant man strutted into the room, followed by a camera-met robot. This was Lockenhart, a very infamous Able City reporter. Misty glared at him with killing intent. Hello, Mr. Hart. I assume you're here for the interview, yes. Now bring him down, chop chop. I will see if he is available. Well, I must be going. Let me know if they're available. Misty looks up from her laptop. Have a nice day, Dr. Kane. Locken turns to him as well. Be careful out there, wouldn't want to get murdered. I beg your pardon. Kane turns back around to look at him. Oh, you haven't heard? There's a murderer on the loose. He waves his fingers for dramatic effect. They've been killing people and even some mechanoloids, so keep an eye out. Oh, well, thank you for the warning. And if you run into them, do scream loud enough so that we'll be able to find you. I would love to be the first to find out who this murderer is. I'll keep that in mind. As Kane turned around to finally leave, they heard someone shouting from the distance. Simply Tall Tales! A man in a fancy blue robe hovered down in a hover chair. This was Pershing D. Helkester, one of the 3 councilmen of the Arcadia Council. "Nothing but lies and conjecture. It was simply a lowlife that got lucky one too many times. The authorities have already apprehended them." "Oh, no. That was just the suspect. The cases have continued." "They have!" He jumps in shock before looking around nervously and clearing his throat. "I mean, of course they have. It is an ongoing investigation, after all." "Speaking of which, it's time for our interview. Let's go." But Helkester looks past him. "Ah, Kane! How was your last expedition?" "It went quite well. We found something quite intriguing. I believe it would be best if we had a meeting with the other councilmen." "Quite right. Misty, send a message to the others. We'll have a hollow meeting in a few hours."
"Yes, sir."
She cheered up a bit, seeing as Locke got rejected. What about our interview?" "Oh, it seems we're booked for today. Come back next week and we can reschedule." Locke grunts and storms outside, slamming the door, with his cameraman Met following behind.
"Apologies for my ignorance, Doctor, but I fail to see why this helmet has so much significance."
"I understand your skepticism, Councilwoman, but this helmet could be the next evolution in robotics. If we can study this helmet and analyze its composition, we might be able to make far more advanced mechanoloids, or even robots similar to humans."
"Perhaps that could be beneficial. After all, with those rogue mechanoloid attacks recently, having them be more intelligent could prevent such incidents." "I agree with this. Having the people not be afraid of mechanoloids going rogue would be very beneficial, not only for us, but for everyone in Able City. I say, Dr. Kane, that we have you examine that helmet and see what information you can dig up."
"My deepest gratitude. I will make sure to send you all a message whenever I find out anything." We then cut to a few days later, as Helkester has sent out Misty to try to locate Locken, as they've been keeping an eye on him ever since their interaction a few days before, and the tracker inside of his cameraman Met had stopped while in one of Able City's alleyways.
"Oh my!"
She gasps as she sees the sight before her. She found Locken's Met in pieces on the ground, with Locken nowhere to be found. She slowly approached it and picked it up, seeing if the camera was still functional. It was, and it had a new recording on it. She decided to play it back.
"You son of a bitch! I found you! I knew I could!"
Locken was being held by his neck by a robot? It wasn't like any robot that Misty had ever seen. It was humanoid. It even had hair.
"Those damn councilmen, they will certainly recognize me for sure. After this." "What are you doing?" Ah!
Without any hesitation or sign of resistance, the robot broke his neck. Then, with one arm, which appeared to be some sort of arm cannon, it incinerated his body. It then turned toward where the Met was recording and fired the arm cannon. The recording ends. Without wasting any more time, Misty takes the camera and rushes out of the alleyway. She goes back to Arcadia Tower. "What's the situation?" Kane went to Arcadia Tower as soon as he got the distress signal. Misty had found a recording of the murderer. It was a robot, and it had a very similar helmet to the one that you found. Kane's eyes widened. "Which is why we got Commander Stern to track the thing and send a team down to its location." An older, muscular man approached. This was Howard Stern, a military commander for the human military in Strum City, the neighboring city of Able City. "I've sent a team down to its location. I gave them authorization to use as much force as necessary." "Do you think it requires that much?" You might completely destroy it! You said it yourself, Kane. That helmet was made of materials that you hadn't even seen. If this thing is made the same way, then we have no other choice if we want to stop it. But it could lead to a breakthrough! It's already killed dozens of innocents! As the two men stare each other down, Stern gets a call on his communicator. Yes? What? What do you... Even the tank? Sergeant! Sergeant, respond! Sergeant! He turns to the two. That thing wiped out an entire military squadron. We appreciate what you have done for us, Doctor, but this thing is too dangerous to be left alive. Kane falls silent. We'll have to launch a missile strike. What? Are you insane? The city still needs to be evacuated! I'll go. Hellcaster looks shocked. An entire military squadron was destroyed, and you think that you can do this alone? We have an experimental weapon. It was originally meant to be used by a mechanoloid, but ours aren't nearly intelligent enough to maneuver in that building that thing is located in. I'm not wasting any more men. And with that, Stern leaves. As Kane and Hellcaster watched on their screen, they saw Stern approach the building that the robot was in, which was an abandoned mechanoloid factory. As Stern gets off of his ride chaser, he looks around at the corpses of his men, as well as the broken machinery around them. Whoever the hell made this is a monster. As he walked inside, he readied the experimental weapon, an arm cannon that looked fairly similar to the one that the robot had in the recording, the experimental name for this weapon being the Buster. As he looked around, he saw that the mechanoloids that were still on the conveyor belts had been ripped to pieces. Looks like this thing hates its own kind just as much as anything else. As he continued walking down the corridor, he saw it. The red robot was ripping out the circuits of another mechanoloid. This was his chance. He pulled out the Buster and began to fire. The plasma shooting out from the Buster was searing his arm, but as the shots made the robot stop moving, he continued to fire. Die, you son of a bitch! He continues to fire until he can't bear the pain anymore, and puts his arm down. The robot has multiple holes in its back, but even with that, it turns around to look at him. It rushes over, grabs him by his neck, and slams him against the wall. As Stern struggles, the robot suddenly stops. It seems that the robot was in pain, grabbing onto its head. This was Stern's chance. He fired one final shot before his arm was completely incinerated. He falls to the floor. As he does, the robot looks down at him and blasts him with its own Buster. Hellcaster and Kane could see the Buster shot from their footage on the monitor. Hellcaster quickly rushed to the computer console. I'm launching them! Now! But the whole city hasn't been evacuated yet! Do you know how many more people you'll be killing? And what will it matter? This thing will kill them anyway! We have to take it out now! Despite Kane trying to stop him, Hellcaster presses the button. They watched with bated breath as the entire city went white. As it faded, they saw in horror, as everything in the city was lit ablaze, but the robot, smiling sinisterly as it walked through the ruined streets. Kane simply closes his eyes. The way to hell is paved with good intentions. Perhaps the ones who created these robots had that same idea in mind. Whether they were meant to be our destroyers or our saviors, I'm not sure if we will ever know. From that day on, tales of the red robot destroyer known as Omega began to spread throughout the world. Some even said that they could hear a maniacal laughter before it approached. And there you have it. What if X was never built? Let me know in the comments below what you think of this very dark ending. What would your version of What If X Was Never Built be like? And what other Mega Man what ifs would you like me to tackle in the future? I'll see you all next time.